Welcome, and thanks for joining this webinar on enterprise content management in HR. My name is Tom DeAndre, Business Development Manager with Lexmark's Solution Development Organization. Lexmark has a unique approach to how we help our customers improve process efficiency and reduce costs. By combining our award-winning multifunction scan technologies with content management and workflow solutions from Perceptive software, we provide complete end-to-end enterprise content management solutions that improve the capture, management, and access of information from any source, paper and digital. HR onboarding is one of the more common business areas struggling with the efficient management of documents from many different sources. Deanna Ferrante, Senior Solution Manager for HR from Perceptive Software, is one of the foremost experts on how improved document management and access can impact the onboarding process. She offers a wealth of information that we hope will prove valuable for improving cost, speed, and compliance within your HR organization. Deanna?
Thanks so much, Tom, and thank you all for joining us today. We're excited to share with you what we're doing with HR in general, but specifically with onboarding and all that paperwork that comes into your organization when a new hire joins your team. What I'd like to do is just take a moment and show you how we address HR and what our strategy looks like when it comes to HR solutions. We really look at this from the perspective of managing the HR lifecycle, that employee's time from the time that they start through the recruiting process to the time that they're hired, which we'll talk about in a lot of detail today, to all that happens to them while they're at your organization. Their names are changing, they're getting promoted, they're moving through your organization, they're updating their benefits and payroll information, and all of that can be easily captured, stored, and accessed from a central location, the ImageNow server. And then, of course, we want to address that time when employees leave our organization, whether it be voluntarily or involuntarily, through the offboarding process. So we offer solutions that really take you from the very beginning of this process when someone applies to your organization through their lifetime there. Let's take a look at onboarding and how we're capturing, accessing, and sharing documents. And before we do that, what I want to do is do a quick polling question to find out what's important to you at your organization. You'll see a poll on the screen in front of you now with a couple of options. Certainly there are probably even more challenges that you could identify, but these are the 4 key that we wanted to address today. If you would just take a moment and vote for which one is the biggest challenge at your organization, and then we'll reveal those results to you in just a moment. Take just 5 more seconds maybe and answer that question for us, and then we'll show you those results. Okay, you can see here from the voting that certainly all of these appear to be challenges that you're experiencing with your organization. And not surprisingly, process delays come up, as well as just being able to track and make sure that all the documents we should have received are actually part of that employee file moving forward. And then accessing and securing documents is something we talk a lot about in our HR solutions. And that is making sure that people are getting access to the content they need as quickly as possible, but making sure they're not accessing information they shouldn't be seeing. So all certainly document challenges that we face as part of the onboarding process. So let's jump back in here now and take a look at how we can help your organization make this process more efficient. When we talk about getting information, we know that this can come in a variety of ways. This could be a fax that we receive in Dallas. It could be email that we get in New York. It could be something we've scanned in LA. But all of that content makes up that employee file, and it's important that we're able to capture it regardless of the format or regardless of where it initiates. So as new employees start across the country or even across the world, we want to make sure we're able to bring that in and make it part of one file and then give access to those documents as needed. Once that information is captured and stored in the ImageNow server, we're able to utilize workflow to begin moving it through our organization. Now, in a paper world today, this might mean that we need to make copies of this information and send it through the mail or walk it to another department or send it in our office to another location. But with ImageNow, we're able to use workflow to move that information at a click of a button onto the next person so that they're not waiting on us. We're also then securing the information we're providing because everyone's accessing the same document rather than multiple copies or versions. when we've finished that processing of that document, the most important thing for us is how do I go about getting it back? I need to find it. I need to answer a question. I need to understand something that was done with that document. Well, we can give you one-click retrieval from any application you're using today. You'll see 5 of the main HRISs that most people are using today, but we can integrate with over 900 different applications to make sure that when I'm on that screen in my HRIS system, I'm able to immediately retrieve the documents that correspond to that individual or to that process that I'm viewing. When we think about how we're capturing documents, a lot of that's happening through scanning. A lot of our world can still be housed on paper. If you think about employees updating information, a lot of times they're giving you that in physical form, or they're needing to provide supplementary documents for that change, such as a marriage certificate or a birth certificate, that it's always going to come in that paper form as well. So being able to capture that through a device, whether it be a Lexmark device or some other scanning mechanism you have, is going to help you quickly introduce that document into a workflow process that can then allow you to share that information, get the processing completed very quickly, and make sure that it's accurate and timely. This is a quick overview of how this actually looks within an environment. This is going to show you Lawson today, some integration specifically with Lawson around a tax form. And we'll take this perspective of one of our HR folks, an HR generalist or an HR specialist, someone who's responsible for answering questions and really being a frontline resource to your employees today. Here's a request we might receive on a regular basis to verify deductions. This could come in email. This could be someone calling me on the phone. This could be someone showing up at my desk or my office. Once the request is received, I'm going to navigate to their screen, in this case HR 11 within Lawson, and find their record. Now that I'm on Stephen Black's record, I'm able to use one click of the Image Now icon to retrieve all the documents that I have for Stephen within our system, within his file. By double-clicking on that W-4, I can visually verify the number of deductions that Stephen chose on his most recent W-4 and answer his question immediately, whether that be through email while we're still on the phone together or whether that be face-to-face. Now, in a paper world, this might be me having to take a message, write it down, go to a file, retrieve the document, verify the information, and then call back. So you can see we've already created a tremendous amount of efficiencies just by putting the information at your fingertips. When we talk about accessing that information, we need to assign some value to it so that we can make sure we can find it. As you can imagine, employee ID and employee name are the key critical values that help us find documents, as well as make those documents unique within the system. We can retrieve Stephen Black's information because Stephen Black, with his employee ID, makes him unique from anyone else in the company. But we also want to think about dates that are important for us. So we can store a number of dates depending on the document you're looking at, the process that you're automating. That could be something related to the application process, and we want to know when they applied. Maybe they've applied multiple times, and that's going to help us understand when the most recent application was received. We may also want to track when someone leaves our organization. This is going to help us with benefits determinations as well as retention of those documents once they're no longer an active employee. We also might want some information specifically about what they do at our organization. If we've got an up-and-coming employee who's going to have multiple roles within the company, it's helpful to know which documents apply, for example, which path applies to their most recent promotion. And then, of course, within those positions, within those times that they are working in different areas within our organization, we've captured department, we've captured title. We can also capture some basic information about who they report to, who they themselves are, so that maybe we can give them access to those documents, and be able to roll up and report based on region, location, or other criteria that's important to you. You may want to grant some of this access, and this data can help you do that. Certainly when we talk about HR, we always have in the back of our mind what I need in order to be prepared for an audit or any kind of examination of the files that we have today. Are they complete? Do we have all those documents? And certainly in most organizations, though I'm sure you're more proactive than most, that is a very timely process where I receive a request and then I go to figure out if I have all the right things to provide back. With Image Now, we want to put that information at your fingertips before the request comes and make sure that you feel prepared to answer those questions once they come up. So we can do things like dashboards, as you see here, that will help me understand how long is it taking us to process a new hire. I received the documents on Monday when they started, and it took me a day, a week, or a month to get all of those through our processing end-to-end and into our system of record. One of the most important things that we do, and some of the most value we can add to an employee file, is this overview here report that shows you, with those check marks, which documents are physically present in an employee file. We can require certain documents to be present and then report on missing required documents, as well as just showing you comprehensively what we have for that employee. So again, I'm proactively managing what information I have and making sure that it's accessible as needed. This can be done at an individual employee level. I could run this report, for example, based on last Monday's new hire and see everyone who started last Monday and how we're progressing towards a complete employee file for each of those individuals. When we talk about audit as well, we're talking about what should we have and what shouldn't we have. When we talk about retention, we like to talk about it from two perspectives. One being, how long do I need to keep this to be compliant? But the other being, when should I let it go to remain compliant? So when we talk about the retention of an HR employee file, we have a challenge because the documents within that file get kept for various amounts of time. So I might keep some documentation for a year or two, and I might keep some for 10, and I might keep some forever. So being able to manage retention at the individual document level, such as an I-9, is going to give me the ability to say, even within this file, I want to treat these documents differently. We're able to do that based on events. So if their status changes from full-time to part-time, from active to inactive to retired, we're able to track those events and apply those policies to the documents. We're also able to help you should you ever have litigation issues or need to provide files. We can hold everything within there, regardless of its retention policy, to make sure that when you go to pull that file, you have all the documentation to date. When we talk about letting go of documents, we know that's a sensitive period for you because it's hard to let it go wondering if you will someday need to come back and find it. So we can add an approval process as well that says, notify me when this document's ready for retention or this set of documents are ready for retention, and then you can make a decision at that time about whether to let those go as well. And retention is really a life cycle. It is the beginning from the time that we capture it, for the period that we hold on to it, for the time that we might transfer or store it off-site in some cases today. We can manage all of that within ImageNow as well. And eventually, once we've notified you, you've approved, in some cases, the disposition of that retention schedule, then we can help you get rid of that document, whether it be move it off-site, archive it, or actually destroy it. So one of the things that we talk a lot about when we talk about onboarding is systems. One of the things that happens a lot in HR, maybe more so than other departments within your organization, is we leverage multiple systems to make sure that we have all the information we need, that we're processing things as efficiently as possible. So you might be saying, well, this is one more system for me to manage. Let me tell you where ImageNow fits in that larger picture. When we talk about applications that you have within your department today, certainly you're running some type of HRIS. So I have a Lawson or a PeopleSoft or an Oracle or an SAP, whatever that system might be for you today. That's my system of record. That's where my data comes from when I want to talk about payroll, when I want to talk about an employee's status within the organization. Continues to be your system of record here. We know that you also are running third-party applications. This could be as an ATS, an applicant tracking system. This could be a recruiting, an onboarding system. This could be talent management, performance, succession planning, and it could be all of the above. So when we talk about third-party applications, we're talking about everything else you're running to supplement your HR processes today. So here's how ImageNow fits into this story. ImageNow becomes that central repository where we store all of those documents, regardless of where they initiate and regardless of where the data resides. We want to pull that information and keep what you need associated to those documents so that they can be retrieved, reported on, and retained appropriately. You already know, based on the story we've talked about so far today, that we can use the data stored in your HRIS, so that Lawson HR11 screen with Stephen Black's information, to one-click retrieve documents that are stored in ImageNow. What we can also do, though, is create documents in ImageNow for the data that lives in those third-party systems. So if I use Silk Road Red Carpet to onboard my employees, At the end of that process, I have a really complete onboarding file for that employee, but it's now separate from what I might have for their recruiting process and separate from all the performance reviews I'll have going forward. So storing that in ImageNow gives you one place to look when you're ready to find the information you need for your employees. So now what you can do, because those documents and images are in ImageNow, is go to Lost in HR 11, use that one-click retrieval of the ImageNow icon, and be able to see not only documents that started in ImageNow, but documents that started in Red Carpet or any other application you're using today. What this really creates for you is a comprehensive employee file. This is a quick screenshot from ImageNow that shows you how you can view information from ImageNow about a particular employee. You'll see this column very quickly tells me I'm viewing all documents for Michael Thomas in this case that I have in the system and that I have access to in the system. Now I can search across employees, so I could be looking at multiple employees maybe who all report to one manager. I could look at employees who all started on the same date or who all have a review coming up in the next few weeks or the next month. So I can return results based on what I'm looking for in the system for just one employee or for all the employees that I'm concerned with. Document type is going to very quickly tell me exactly what I have for Michael, as well as which document I want to open based on what I'm looking for. So clicking into one of these line items is going to bring up an image of a health enrollment form, or bring up his resume, or bring up that most recent W-4 to verify those deductions. The last column you see on this screenshot for workflow queue is going to give me visibility into the processing of that document. So some of these documents may already be complete. They've already been through the process, and I know where they are because we've finished that several weeks or several days or even several hours ago. But you'll see that some of these documents, like the 401k, are currently sitting with payroll. So should Michael call and have a question for me, I can immediately verify that payroll has this document, may be in the middle of processing it, and know where to direct my questions, whether that be through ImageNow, going and looking at the document itself, or whether that be picking up the phone or walking down the hall. One of the things we really love about our HR solutions is the ability to give you control over creating documents to capture information. What you'll see here play out is an EForms demonstration that allows us to go in and capture a new direct deposit authorization from an employee. They're completing the form right online from your intranet or your portal and able to submit it directly to ImageNow for processing and access. Now this form through your portal is just a URL, so it's really the same as booking travel or placing an order on Amazon.com. Really, we're just going in and collecting data in a structured format that can now be used to continue processing. So once this comes into ImageNow, a payroll associate can quickly validate that all the correct information was provided and that we're ready to update the system with the new information. Should they have any questions, they know who submitted it, and they can follow up immediately with them to clarify anything that they might need. This form that you access through your portal also doesn't require you to know anything about ImageNow. I'm submitting it just as if I don't even know ImageNow exists, but it's automatically coming in and immediately available for processing. EForms really have a lot of value for all of those documents that you have today that you capture but don't necessarily have a standard process for. You're not using links to a form today, a fillable PDF, or any other way to capture that information. This can really help you capture structured data, validate that it's accurate, and begin that process immediately. So I've already mentioned the word security as well as audit several times throughout, but certainly it's at the foundation of everything that we talk about when we speak about HR. So I want to talk to you a little bit about your files today. I know this can be an uncomfortable discussion because files can be a sore subject for some. But when we think about your files today, we're talking about those physical folders that you have where you're collecting information about that employee. And those physical folders could be one big folder with several sections, or it could be that you have individual folders for the different components of the file. You'll see here I've listed out just some of the common ways that we see files separated. And most of this is based on who's getting into them and what information it contains. So a personnel file is going to be a little more broadly accessed, be general information that can typically be less secured, even though we would want to keep some individuals out of it. In contrast to that, if we talk about medical information, whether that be from workers' comp or leave of absence claims, or whether that be something that has come in from the individual that references any kind of condition or ailment that they may have, we certainly would want to keep that more secure. So in a physical file world today, you may actually be putting those in separate file cabinets or in separate file rooms just to keep the right people out of that information. Well, ImageNow can certainly replicate that structure for you. We can separate those subfolders or those sections of your file and keep them separate and only grant access to individual sections, which in itself is a great value. What we can also do, though, over a physical file world is go down to the next more granular level. So within those sections, wouldn't it be great if you could give access just to a region or a location just for their employees that roll up through their HR generalist or their business partner? So now we're taking and saying not only is it in a file room, in a file cabinet, but within those drawers I can even get down to the level of saying this one is for our Portland office, but this one is for our Spokane office, and be able to just really distinguish between those. You can do that for types of employees. You may want to keep your executive files separate from your employee files, which you may want to keep separate from your HR employee files. So you can start to really narrow that down and really only grant access to what people need to see instead of making it more broad because it's the easiest way to contain the information today. What that looks like in a visual is that my HR director certainly is going to have more broad access across the file, but a general manager that I may want to see performance information, for example, could have access just to the personnel section of that employee file. Now I've granted access, I'm improving efficiencies, I'm taking away that phone call that might have come into HR to give that manager access, but still providing everyone what they need to do their job on a daily basis. Another way that we can do this is through what we call views. And views direct users to specific documents within the system so that they can see what they need with a click. So a view that I might use might show me performance evaluations for all of the people that report to me. Or I'm an HR business partner and I know that we're on a specific review cycle and I want to see all the reviews that are coming up for the month of April. You can start to define criteria and build that out as you do your daily processing. I can just click on that link and immediately see the information that meets the criteria I defined. So it's like saving that query or that search criteria so that I can use it over and over again. I could, for example, ask you what performance period you're looking for. You enter a quick date, and it knows to go look for all the employees who have a performance review coming up during that cycle. So what I'd like to do now is another polling question here, and this is going to ask you a question, not a trick question, I promise, but it's asking about the average organization makes, fill in the blank, copies of each document. And you have 4 choices there, 11, 14, 17, or 19. And like for you to select one of those, and then we'll see how good you are when we display the results and give you the answer. Okay, let's take a look at those results. How did we do? All right, so we had a lot of votes for 11 and 14, a few votes for 17, and a few votes for 19. Okay, so drum roll please. We'll show you the actual answer here. And it is 19 copies that the average organization makes of every document you have. As you can imagine, this creates a lot of inefficiency for creating copies, distributing them throughout the organization, but it certainly puts us at audit risk as well. Not knowing where your original might reside or how many people have copies of that document throughout the organization can be a very scary thing, especially for your legal and audit teams. So 19 copies on average. Hopefully your number's lower, but if it's not, this might be a great way for you to start thinking about how to reduce that number to save yourself time and money within your organization. You'll also see that filing documents accounts for a lot of our labor within the HR department. A majority of the customers that I work with have nothing but full-time staff dedicated to filing documents. So these people who could have other responsibilities or who could be sharing other responsibilities, filling in, helping to back up other responsibilities, are oftentimes in the file room putting paper into file folders. And in a lot of cases, we're hoping they're putting them into the right file folders. So certainly cost and time associated there. You'll also see that on the average, an organization loses 1 out of every 20 documents. Now, we hope those are the less important ones, but certainly we can't always guarantee that. So knowing that at the time you receive a document, whether that's on paper or electronic, you can immediately capture that paper into ImageNow and know exactly where it is, adds a lot of value as well as efficiency for your organization as well. And I don't know about anybody else, but spending 400 hours per year searching for lost files just doesn't sound like a good time to me. So taking that time and allocating it somewhere else can also create efficiencies. Another thing that we hear a lot, we have several customers on the phone with us today as well, I recognized, but there are a lot of people who have saved physical storage space and costs just by being able to get rid of those files and all the copies they create of them. So imagine the cost savings for your HR department if you were able to free up that space, utilize it in a different capacity, and not have to pay for those clunky file cabinets and those storage systems that you're maintaining today. I do want to take just a moment here to introduce you to Perceptive software if you're not familiar with us, tell you a little bit about what we do. And then as I'm doing that, I'd ask if you have any questions about what we've talked about today, if you're interested in getting some more information, or if there's just something you'd like for me to clarify. Feel free to use the questions pane at the bottom of your go-to meeting screen, and we will be reviewing those and answering some of those here after I go through just these next couple of quick slides. So go ahead and get those submitted, and then we'll tackle those when we get there. So Perceptive software, if you're not familiar with us, here's just a very quick overview. We're founded in Kansas City in 1995, and we build enterprise content management software and solutions that are being used by more than 2,500 organizations in 45 countries. So our solutions are really out there and helping people today. And in addition to our global headquarters, which is here in Kansas City, where I am today, we have regional offices in London, Paris, Frankfurt, Amsterdam, Madrid, Milan, Budapest, Geneva, Dubai, Sao Paulo, Singapore, and Sydney. So if you haven't found one of us yet, you're likely to run into one here in the near future. And we were acquired back in June of 2010 by Lexmark, but we operate as a standalone software business within the Lexmark family. We have a 10-year annual growth rate of more than 35%, which has made us one of the 10 largest ECM companies in the world. In fact, according to a recent report from Gartner, we're the fastest growing global ECM provider, growing at more than 4 times the industry average. So we're not only doing what we do, we're doing it better than most of the companies out there, and certainly with a lot of success. So if you're not familiar with us, I encourage you to become familiar. Another thing that I'd like to show you is just our experience when it comes to HR, what we would consider to be part of our back office solutions. We do a lot of our work in HR, AP, contract management, and other functions that are supporting your organization across all of your locations and all of your structure. A couple of the things that we do specifically with HR, I talked about in the beginning our suite of solutions, but we really are focused on getting you a comprehensive employee file and making sure that all of your information is easily accessible from any location. We do have language ability to go into different countries. We are doing that today with our 45 countries that we're in. So be aware, if you're a global or even a national company, we have support for you, and we've worked with companies just like you to make them successful as well. You'll see some logos here on the left-hand side of this slide that show you just a few of our many customers, and certainly people that we've learned a lot from and that we've been able to help quite a bit in gaining efficiencies with their HR implementations. So with that, I will go to our questions pane and take a look here at what's been submitted. Okay, so we do have a couple that have come in. Please continue to add any questions that might come up either as we answer these or as you think more about what we've talked about so far. But I'll go ahead and address a couple that we've seen, and there's some similar ones, so I'll group these together and kind of talk about the overall themes here. So the first one was, I mentioned several slides back about integration with multiple systems, and as I talked about earlier, a lot of our customers do take advantage of best-of-breed applications. So I want to use the best performance management system that you have out there, but I want to continue to use Lawson, and I want to continue to use my ATS and my onboarding application. So certainly something that we encourage and something that we can work very closely with. In fact, one of our customers, just for example, utilizes Position Manager for their applicant tracking system, Red Carpet for onboarding, Lawson as their HRIS, and then Excel spreadsheets tied with Lawson to manage their performance reviews. As you can imagine, there's a lot of moving parts and a lot of different access that has to take place there, and we've been able to integrate with all of those and really create some efficiencies for them. They're getting things done more quickly. They have better visibility into the data, so they're making sure they're making good quality decisions at the time that they're making those decisions. And they're able to view a comprehensive file. So if I go to look for it, I don't have to wonder, is that a document we got during the recruiting process or during the onboarding process, and which system do I go to? They just go to ImageNow, and they can see whichever document that they need. So certainly integration with those systems is something that we really pride ourselves on and something we think is really, really important focus. Use what you have today, but leverage us to help make that a more integrated system. So a couple of questions there about that. Let me also ask or answer here just a question that came through about capture. So I mentioned on one of the slides very early on that we can capture from any device you might have today. We do, obviously, having been acquired by Lexmark, have very solid and tight integration with Lexmark through a product we call Interact for Lexmark. And that allows us to capture documents at the device, add some value to them, and then immediately kick them into a process or into ImageNow for workflow or upload into any system that you have, and really just make that more efficient at the time the document's captured. We do have the ability to integrate with any devices that you might be using today, so whether that be another MFP, whether that be a desktop scanner, whether it be documents you already have electronically that are sitting out on a network directory or that you might get through fax or through email, we're able to capture those as well. So just for example, we have we can go out and use a product that we have to monitor a dedicated email that you might have. So you're receiving all of your documents in through hr@yourorganization.com. We can monitor that email, bring that information into ImageNow as you dictate, and make it immediately a document that's available for review and processing. Same thing with a fax line, and we can also look at any network directories where you might be storing consistent amount of information. Okay, and I'm just reviewing another question that just came in, so let me read through that here. Okay, so there was a question. Let me address the logistics question here real quickly before I take another process question, and that was about whether this is being recorded. It is, and you can certainly get access to that recording. We can provide that to you. Should you need to go back, or should you just want to hear it again, we can do that as well. It'll also be available out on my blog, so feel free to go out and take a look at that. I posted it yesterday, and we'll post a link to the recording after today's call. Okay, I also had a question here that I was just reading through about related documents. Is there a way for us to return related documents? And there is. What works really well with ImageNow is once we assign values to a document, so if you think about the screenshot I showed where we had Michael Thomas's records and we had his employee ID, once I associate information to the image that I have for him, then I can go and retrieve anything else that might be related to that, whether it be something that's the same document type. So maybe I'm viewing his most current W-4 or his most current 401k, but what I really want to see is everything else he's ever submitted with that document type as well. That's one way we can use related documents. Another would be, I want to see all documents for this particular ID or for this particular name. Or I want to see all documents for Michael while he was working as an operations manager or while he was located in California. All of the criteria that we store with the document can then be used for retrieval as well as for reporting and retention. Okay, let me see. I've got another one here that I want to talk about. Yes, this is a question that comes up quite a bit when we talk about HR files, and that's because you have a lot of them sitting around somewhere, and it's in regard to scanning what you have today. Something that we definitely encourage for you to take a look at what makes sense for your organization to go back and capture in terms of your current paper files. And most of our customers do go ahead and go back and scan active employees that they still have files on site for. Probably the most common delimiter that we see, or where we see the delineation there. Some people will say we're going to go back and scan active only back 5 years. We had a customer that did that, and that was really their success point because they found that they didn't go back further than 5 years ever to retrieve documents, or very rarely. So their break-even point or their best value was to scan 5 years and still manually retrieve anything prior to that, as well as capturing, of course, everything from that point forward for that active employee. A couple of ways that we go about accomplishing this. Documents can be scanned in bulk. So you could say, you know, this person's been here forever, and I just want to take all their personnel information to date and really scan it in as one big file, one big document, and just have it available. I rarely go back and get it, but I need to have it should I ever need it. Certainly something you can do. We can also go more granular and help you scan in your documents at an individual page or document level, maybe where you have more sensitive information or where you need to increase visibility to a particular document, or where you might need additional security because those documents shouldn't be broadly accessed or may need to go back and be provided for audit or litigation. So how you go about doing that can vary, but certainly we have some best practices we'd be happy to share with you on what our other customers are doing today and how that's really adding value for them in their process. Okay, just reading through another question that was submitted here. Okay, so this question that came in was about information being retrieved or data being pulled over from another application, and would it be an Eform solution? So when we think about how information can come over, there's a variety of ways. We can utilize web services to bring that information over and populate it into a template, so an Eform or a form within ImageNow. Now we've got that information into ImageNow. We've decided how we want to format it before whatever comes over, and we're going to have a consistent output for what that looks like. We can also, if the systems you're working with, let's say an iSIMS or a Taleo or Silk Road, are able to output files, we can collect those files and bring them in as the document output that they are able to create as well. So a variety of ways to do that depending on what your system allows you to send out, as well as how you want to bring it in and consistently display it back within ImageNow. Let me read a couple of more. Okay, great question here about submitting an Eform. So I showed the example where the submitter was creating the form, entering all of the fields from a portal or an intranet type scenario, and the question was about, do they have to be logged into ImageNow to submit the form? And the answer is no, and that's where the real value comes with Eforms, because they don't know they're in ImageNow and they don't have to have a license or be logged into ImageNow. They can simply submit that form. We pick it up immediately upon submission and bring it into licensed ImageNow users for review and processing. So great question there. I'm a user, I go to the portal, I complete an Eform, and I'm able to submit that without ever actually being licensed in ImageNow. There's also a question of follow-up about the related documents comment that I made about are related documents returned from ImageNow or from other applications as well. And there's really two answers to this question. The first is it's going to return and search within ImageNow for anything that I have in the system, but it doesn't matter where it started. So as long as I'm storing it in ImageNow, it's going to find it as part of that related documents search. What it's not going to do is, without some customization, is go out to get information from another system unless we set that up in advance to do so. What we are looking at, though, is common with a lot of people today, is that concept of enterprise search, which I think is where you're headed here. So don't be surprised if you hear from us, sometime down the road, that we're able to do more of that federated searching and go out to other systems to find it where it lives today. That's certainly something that's been on our radar, and I know in the HR world in general as well. I see another question here back to security. So certainly we knew this would be a big topic and want to address this one also. This was about assigning security, and I mentioned we can do that at what we call a drawer, or the equivalent of a physical file cabinet level. So I can I have a key to get into it or I don't. I can get into that section or that file or I can't. What we can also do, though, is make sure that you are only allowed to see certain document types, should that be relevant as well. So I may need to see a leave of absence request, for example, as a manager, because I need to know that they're requesting to be gone, but I shouldn't see any of the supporting documentation from physicians or follow-up certification as part of that process. So you can go all the way down to an individual document and decide who should and should not be able to see that within the system. Okay, so a couple of more things here that I just wanted to take a look at. Here's another question specifically about retention policies. And yes, if you go back and look at that, that slide that we talked about earlier, if you think about that visual, we were talking about retention policies. And I mentioned that we can do that at the individual document type level because that's really important for HR. If I were talking about invoices, for example, with an AP solution, we might say, you know, they're all invoices, they're all in one folder for a vendor, and we're just going to do it by date and just get rid of them. The problem is HR documents don't all function the same, as we all know. So retention policies can be applied at the individual document level so that I can decide document by document how long to keep them and what to do at the end of its life cycle. For example, we all know that from an I-9 perspective, we have to keep that document a very specific amount of time and are required to dispose of it at the end of that retention period. And that changes based on the status of the employee. So I'm going to keep it for 3 years as long as they remain active, but once they leave the organization, then I'm going to keep it for a year. So, and whichever of those is longer. We can manage that type of retention policy directly within ImageNow so you don't have to wonder, and we can notify you when it comes up at the end of its life cycle. Okay, I think I've grouped some of these answers together, but I think I've addressed most of the questions we have. Let me give you just another moment. If you do have any other questions that you wanted to post for us here to answer, I'd be happy to answer those for you. And I'll continue to monitor to see as things come in and make sure that we've answered all of them for you. One of the things that, again, I just saw another question here that I'll address as you think about any more you might have. And that is in regard to that retrieval that I talked about, the one-click retrieval from Lawson. So when we think about how we go and retrieve documents, we use a technology that we have patented and have had for quite some time called Learn Mode. And Learn Mode is really our ability to take information from a screen within your HRIS or whatever other applications you might be using and apply it to the document ImageNow. And once we create that connection between the document and the system, that information lives and is joined together in a way that we can then not only have it for the document itself to see it, view it, research, report on it, and retrieve it, but now it also makes a connection with Lawson. So that one-click retrieval is, we know that this is Stephen Black and his information, his ID is 12345, and ImageNow also knows that. So when I click that button, I'm simply going and retrieving all the documents that match that criteria. And that's all something that you define as part of our process, our implementation process. What values matter to you and how you want to connect and to what systems you want to be able to connect those documents. I did see a question just come in regards to message agents. It's one of the functionality pieces I mentioned earlier in terms of how we can get information from other systems that you're using today. And that information can be automatically used, that method can be automatically used to retrieve documents that reside in other systems and display them back to users. So similar to how you might be using web services in other areas today, we can do that as well. And we have APIs, standard APIs that we can utilize as well as working with you to establish those connections. So certainly something we can go into more detail with you on, but something that does come up as we talk about documents living in multiple different systems. Okay, well, I think we've had a chance to answer the questions that have come in today. I really appreciate your time. I hope this was useful and informative for you. If you'd like any additional information, please let us know. We'd be happy to talk to you about any of the specific functionality we discussed today or just our overall HR solutions and how they might add value for you. I mentioned that I've got a blog out there. Please feel free to check us out. It's called HR Empowerment, and if you search that, you'll be able to see everything we've been posting in the HR industry and what we see as trends and what's coming and going in HR world. So feel free to check that out as well. And as I mentioned, there will be a follow-up with a recorded link, as well as that will be posted on my blog should you need it. So I appreciate your time today. Thank you so much.